spring, but we decided to move it up earlier this year so we can really get a good understanding of where we are and where we need to go with the rest of the year in partnership with the school district. There are a number of handouts that we had on the front table, and there are 3 of them specifically, and they give the update as far as North Omaha data. And so if you did not pick one up on the way in, raise your hand real quick and we'll get one over to you. Raise your hand up. Okay, we need some... all right, thank you. We'll get those around and then we'll bring up the superintendent. He'll walk through the numbers.
Thank you. We need 3.
All right, there's 3 handouts.
All right, 3.
We'll get those around very quickly.
Do you need it? Yeah, I'm following her. Whatever she does. Got you. Thank you. Where's the 3rd person?
There's one that has Education at North Omaha Summit, where we'll be gathering your input, feedback. There's one called North Omaha Schools Trend Report. And there's one that's more detailed around education and youth development. So there's 3 that you will have.
We're missing, yeah, that's the one we got.
Oh, right here. That's what happened. No, you're fine. Hey, Doctor.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you? Thank you.
Yeah, that's that one. Yeah, that's big.
Oh.
Yeah.
Again, we say good morning to you. Again, you should have those 3 sheets, especially the one with a crowd this size. We won't have an opportunity to have everyone speak, but we do want to capture your feedback as we walk through this. So again, there's the sheet for feedback, there's the North Omaha trends, and then there's a more detailed sheet that gives some of the strategies and projects that are underway in North Omaha and actually around the district right now. So we want to stay real focused on moving it forward. We have a number of folks that are here that we may call on at various times with various questions that you may have. And we also will be using the keypads that we use at our community meetings so we can gather additional feedback as well. But again, anyone else, raise your hand if you don't have those 3 sheets and we'll make sure we get them around. Okay, we have a few more. Looks like we're about ready to roll. All right. All right, let's jump into it. Again, just we've been working these community meetings. I was sharing with some of our national guests that are here with us this morning, going on 9 years, and it's really about focusing on solutions, identifying issues, focusing on solutions, and then what are the action steps leaving out of here that we want to work on collectively. But we have teachers here, we have family members, we have community-based organizations, people from all over the city, and especially those from North Omaha that are a part of this process. And we are very honored and delighted that we have the superintendent, Mark Evans, that's here with us this morning. He comes out at least 3 or 4 times a year and provides an update on what's happening at the district, how we can partner. Also also want to recognize that we have some school board members that are here. Yolanda Williams, our Vice President of the school board. Let's recognize her. Yolanda. I want to recognize Mark Snow, who's here, a school board member with OPS. Thank you for coming out. I know we have representatives from the mayor's office that are here as well. Thank you for coming out this morning. Thank you. We have Representative John Ewing, Douglas County Treasurer John Ewing. I thought I saw him somewhere. Thank you. Also the board chair of the Empowerment Network. We'll introduce some of the other players that are here. We have a representative, the chair from the learning community. Thank you, Lorraine Chang, for being here as well. We'll introduce some of the other players that are in the room as we go, but let's bring up and let's give an Omaha welcome, North Omaha welcome to Superintendent Mark Evans, who will provide an update on North Omaha schools.
Thanks, Willie, for a great breakfast this morning, so we all appreciate that. Hey, I want to give a couple of shout-outs before we start going through some data and some of the accomplishments that we're having in the school district. One of our staff members, Mr. Jerry Corner, works with Community Family. Jerry, where are you? Let's raise your hand. I don't see him now. He was in here just a second ago. Jerry brought in Mike Rozier yesterday, and he spoke to over 300 of our young men and young ladies, and I will tell you, Mr. Rozier was fantastic. So, Jerry, when you come back in the room, we're saying thank you for that, because he did a great job. Specifically, we dealt with some of our alternative students and young people that are trying to work through some challenges. So we appreciate Jerry for doing that. Also, I just can't help but here I am standing in North High and think that this is the first time in 4 years that the Vikings aren't playing for the state championship. Darn it. Darn it. They got us last night. You may have seen that in the paper. So we're not playing. But you know what, guys? They won 2 in a row, and they were second the year before that. So the Vikings are still great, and they're coming back next year. Mr. Gene Haynes and his team will be right back again next year. Most of those guys are young guys, not too many seniors. They graduated, a ton of those kids, from last year's state championship team. So those guys are coming back. But I just couldn't help but mention that. I was thinking of them when I walked in the door. A couple other items. Just to mention before we start on this data, we had a speaker in town, Diane Ravage, who's one of the most widely known national experts on education. Any of you in the room able to see her the last 2 days? Just raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Looked like about 11, 12 folks. Her message, and you can ask anyone that raised their hand, I think they'll all say it was inspirational. It was inspirational. Because she told us, and told us with statistics too, basically that we're going the right direction, guys. That's what I heard from her the last 2 days. She said you should be working on, for example, early childhood. And guess what, guys? We're opening up a brand new Educare Center at Skinner Elementary School just right up the street. It opens up next month. And if you haven't been over there to see it, go look at it. It's going to help families and young people ages birth to grade 3. Not only will they be getting instructional supports, they're also going to get supports at home. And that doesn't happen in many places across America. We also added early childhood sites at Pinewood, Mount View, and Miller Park this year. Because that's one of the things we got to do, guys. That is worth an applause, I'll tell you. It's a long journey, but if we don't start it out right, it's very difficult to get to the end destination we want to get to. So we've got to spend more time, energy, and resources making that happen, and we are doing that. So with that, I'm going to see if I can start on some of the overviews of where we're at as a district and give you a general glimpse of OPS, and then we're going to get specific, and we're going to drill down into North Omaha, and I've got several staff members here who are going to talk about some specific initiatives. For example, initiatives that we're using, like 75 North at Kennedy Elementary. We've got staff members who are going to talk about that. Wakanda and the turnaround effort at Wakanda Elementary just right up the street, and some of the initiatives that go into that. And we're also going to talk about specifically how we're organizing to support principals. But before we do that, let me see if I can get this to work here. Here we go. Whoop, now it's working too good. Just some quick information. 52,000 young people, a number that's going up every year, approximately 1,000 this year. And folks don't realize that. We are growing fast. Very fast. In fact, so fast that most of our schools are busting at the seams. We have very little space across our district. And so that's one of the issues that we're going to be talking about in a future bond issue, is what we're going to do. One of the things that we did a year ago was to pass a strategic plan that gave clear direction on what you as a community wanted us to focus on. And part of that was improving our facilities, improving safety and security. And so those strategies are now in place, and those are the strategies that are going to give us the results we're looking for. And that's what I'm going to run through here real quickly. And by the way, I've got all this electronically. If you would like copies, don't hesitate. We've got some staff members here who can give you all that data for you. But I wanted to start real quickly and just do a real quick glimpse at the whole district. Guys, here's the reading assessment that the state of Nebraska gives every single year. This is each grade level. I know you probably can't see it real well, but that starts at grade 3 down at the far left end. What you're looking for here is, these are years. The different colors represent different years. And what we're looking for is a stair-step pattern that shows every year when the state assessment is given, students are improving. That's our goal. And this is the same test that's given to every student across the entire state of Nebraska. Now, on this math assessment, we're going to show you reading in a second. If you look in the upper right hand, kind of at the top, you'll see how much gain we've had over the last 5 years. And you'll notice that every one of them shows significant gain. In fact, it's double-digit gains over the last 5 years. Every one but high school, which is 9%, almost double-digit. Now, that is a worthy of applause, because that says our kids are doing better. All right, let's look at reading real quick here, too. Well, actually, this is us compared to the state. And what we're looking for in this chart is that the gap between where the state scores and where our kids score is diminishing. We want the gap to diminish. And this also is diminishing. The gap was 22% 4 years ago, 5 years ago, now it's 18%. So again, we're making headway in how we compare to the state. Now let's look at the reading scores. Again, when you look at this, you're going to see a pattern of the stair step where it's going up. Grade 3, we've had 17% improvement over the last 6 years. The early grades, you can see we're making better headway. We still have some work to do at the high school level on reading. High school is always a tough one on state assessments. Part of it is, when you're a 10th grader in high school, this doesn't count towards your grade, you don't take it as serious, to be quite honest. It's hard to motivate them to take it serious. But you can see the difference that we're seeing with our early grades. Again, double-digit growth, 17, 16, 20%, 14%, 20% growth, 16% growth over a 6-year period. So every year it's showing incremental growth, but at the end of the day we're seeing that kind of growth for those grade levels. And now just to look real quickly how we compare to the state in reading, again the gap is diminishing. Our kids are performing the same or nearly the same. You can see that gap from the far left 6 years ago to the far right is less. And the significance of that for me is we've got more young people coming from poverty. We're at 73.12% free and reduced lunch. The state of Kansas, the state of Nebraska, is 44.12%. So there is a pretty significant difference. Boy, that was a slip. That's been a while, too. Here we go. Science. Same thing, showing improvement, except that we've got some work to do at the high school level. Early grades showing what we want to see. Now let's look at a couple other pieces of data. This is one we've been working on and one that we're continuing to work on. This is suspension rates. How many students are suspended every year? The top 2 lines are middle school and high school. And what you're seeing is the line going down, which means there are fewer students who are suspended at middle and high school. And you can see a pretty dramatic drop from where it was just 8 years ago. So we're heading in the right direction there. And by the way, they're doing some things called behavior intervention. We just did start some training programs with that last year. In fact, I know Mr. Snow worked on it. They worked on the code of conduct, trying to figure out ways to make it better too. I know Dr. Williams worked very diligently on that. And I think those are having part of the results. But I never think it's one thing. It's always a multitude of things. You don't get results in whether it's student achievement, graduation rates, suspension rate. It's a lot of things. It's high-quality teachers, it's high-quality administrators, it's support, it's training, it's understanding how to reach out and wrap your arms around every young person you serve. Every young person you serve. And that's what this reflects, is we're getting closer and closer to that. Now here's one that continues to go the right direction. This year graduation rates, district-wide, broken into subgroups. The significant piece here is those different lines reflect different ethnicities, and you'll see the gap that was there in 02-03 versus 13-14. You can see the overall graduation rate, but you also see the diminishing gap between all of our ethnicities across the district, and that's what we're looking for too. It's not enough that the line goes up, we also have to diminish the gap. So we're making huge headway here. And by the way, the bottom line, that's Hispanic Latino. The blue line, I believe, boy, this is hard to read up here. I believe that's our African American students. And so you can see all of them moving up from really pretty dismal, specifically with our Hispanic Latinos, 44% back in 02-03. And now, shoot, almost up to 80%, approximately 80%. So significant growth. Heading in the right direction there too. Okay, another thing we track is how many students participate in AP exams, because we want to see all of our young people, regardless of free and reduced, regardless of ethnicity, we want more kids in AP courses. And you can see we're making some progress there, but still not exactly where we want. We're showing some movement up, but that's an area that we're going to continue focusing on too. How do we recruit? How do we encourage and support all of our young people to participate? Here's some of the evidence of the evidence is the data, but here's some of the strategies that gave us that evidence. This MTSSB is part of an initiative that the state asked us to come back with some different kinds of strategies to help those suspension rates and to also diminish the gap between different groups that were being impacted by suspensions. And so this is just a programmatic piece that talks about how we're dealing with helping train teachers to create intervention activities within schools, how we create entire cultures with intervention embedded in it. And again, we could go through a lot more details on each one of those. But I wanted to touch in, because it does tie into a lot of our issues. Other cultural proficiency issues that I want you to be aware of that we're working on. Minnesota Humanities, the first one up here. And Sharif Lawaru, Sharif, you raise your hand. Sharif works directly with Minnesota Humanities. He's our Equity and Diversity Director, and he ties their work into our schools. But that organization is filled with some of the most fantastic trainers we've ever worked with, who are helping all of our teachers understand how to work with all cultures and all young people. That $3.3 million is a grant. That's not district dollars, so I wanted you to be aware of that. Most of these activities, we've been fortunate that we've been able to get grant funding to pay for it. And so that's one of the key pieces in how we continue to work on our district culture. So you can see all of those are lists of cultural proficient activities that somehow relate to how we create environments that all young people can be successful. Just a snapshot on how many schools are working with Minnesota Humanities. 1,800 participants, 92 schools, 219 events, 40,000 hours. And if you'd like more information about that, Sharif will be available certainly to ask questions about how the organization, who they work with and how they work. Just some of the reasons why we're seeing some of those good results. And I think that's the end of that piece. And we have some more North Omaha specific information, and I'm going to ask Scott Schmidt-Barney to come up and do that. But before he does, do you have any general questions? We've got more data, and I don't know how much time. Willie, how much time do we have this morning? Really? We got a little bit of time, don't we? So I can answer some questions before Scott comes up with some of the disaggregated data, which is comparison of all, and that's what we're going to move to next.
Two things. On your sheet, there's we want to capture everything. So there's on that sheet that has feedback. We want to know, first of all, what are the areas of progress that you see, gaps that you see, questions that you still may have, and then also any recommendations. So we want to capture those things. We may take two quick questions, and then we want to get into North Omaha, because that's what we said we wanted to focus on, is where we are with North Omaha. And then we'll come back to it. So please use that sheet, because we want to capture as much feedback from everybody that we can. We'll take two quick questions, and then we'll roll into the specific North Omaha, and then we want to bring our keynote speaker up, and then we'll come back to more community dialogue. So that'll be the set. All right, two quick questions. We see two hands here, and then we'll move into the state of North Omaha.
Well, thank you, Mark. My name is Juanita, and I'm a neighborhood leader. And I was just wanting to tell you that your presentation was very good. But there is an area of concern that I have as it relates to the suspension rate. In looking at your presentation, which I would need a copy so that I can look at it in more detail, but I'm a little bit concerned in North Omaha. We're living in a food desert, and I didn't see much attention given to produce being an area of concentration, because I believe that would have some impact on behavior.
Pressure group?
Yeah, that kind of a thing.
Actually, for those of you, if you didn't hear the question, the impact of nutrition on student behavior. We have pretty rigid federal rules that our nutrition services rules runs by. But I don't know if we've done any correlation to produce and kind of fresh foods. Is that part of the question too, or the comment? That's probably worthy of a conversation. I'm not sure that we've done any correlation or research on that. Dr. Williams, I don't know if you've looked anything on that. I don't know that we have. So that's interesting. I'd like to see if there is some correlation. Evidently, have you read some pieces that there's some correlation to nutrition and particularly fresh produce? We'll check into that. I appreciate it.
One more question quickly, and then we'll come to the state of North Omaha.
My name is Mark Welsh from Nebraskans for Peace, and I'm interested in the suspension rates too. What I would like to see is by school, how many of each race are suspended. I understand there's at least one school that's having to do some things, and you've lost some money because you've suspended too many African American and other minority children, and I'd like you to address that school by school.
We do have all that data. Actually, the highest suspension rates are Northwest, North, and Skinner for elementary. Those are the three highest schools. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. We had 88 schools, so I couldn't quote, but we have all that. We do have all that data, and we do turn it into the state. In fact, it's a requirement that you turn it into the state. And part of what I shared on the MTSSB and the Minnesota Humanities piece, that's related to the expenditure of dollars. I think you said we didn't really lose money, we just had to apply it to how we're doing intervention activities to reduce suspensions, how we're finding ways to use pack rooms at elementaries better, how we're finding ways to use in-school suspensions better. So I don't know if that makes sense to you or not, but we didn't really lose any money, we just had to apply it. Sharif, you want to?
Multi-tiered systems of support. When you say,
Explain, yeah.
MTSSB is multi-tiered systems of support for behavior. We'll also be looking at multi-tiered systems of support for academics, but we use that a lot, and so those are one of the things that we'll say a lot, MTSSB, and we know what it means, but before working for the district I didn't, but it's multi-tiered systems of support to find out how we can engage students not only before or not only to interrupt the behavior so that it doesn't move to suspension, but also how can we put in place things to address behavior before they become an issue that you then have to interrupt, because either way there's going to be a disruption of academic time. But MTSSB is multi-tiered systems of support.
And also thank you, Sharif and Superintendent. One thing, each year we work with the school district and research to create a comprehensive scorecard for North Omaha. We do have copies of it. Sometimes there's a lot of information and it's overwhelming at sometimes, but it's every single school, to your question, Mark, and we also have included suspension rates by school, every school in North Omaha. I don't want it to be a distraction yet. Let's go to the overview on North Omaha, and then we'll get the scorecards handed out as a part of the dialogue as we move forward. Is that all right with everybody? So we'll do the overview, and then you'll get the details by school in North Omaha, and then we'll move back into some more community conversation. With that, I really, Scott, the Director of Research, his team has been working with us literally for 9 years to help us have a comprehensive look at North Omaha schools for all the categories that we've asked for, based on what the community has said they want to see. So he's going to do a quick overview, and then we'll hand out the scorecards so you can see for yourself by school graduation rates, reading, math, science, suspensions, percent in special education, all those things that were identified as a part of the achievement plan years ago. All of that data is on that scorecard. So let's please welcome Scott Spitbaum.
Good morning. Good morning. Very glad to be with you all today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the performance of North Omaha schools, and this is a listing. This is a listing of the schools that are included in this analysis. So we're looking across around 27 elementary schools, and then 5 middle schools and 4 high schools. Now I'm going to talk about the improvements we're seeing, the growth we're seeing in these schools, and there is substantial growth. However, let me just say that at the outset, we are not satisfied with where these schools are achieving. We want to see greater achievement from these schools. And as Mr. Evans had highlighted, there are many initiatives going on in the district right now. I would argue that there are a majority of them going on in these schools and these communities, from work at Wakanda to work at Kennedy, and that represents our dissatisfaction and our interest in seeing student achievement equal across the district for all schools, regardless of where they're located in the community. Start with that. And what this shows, it's kind of a difficult slide to see, but this shows an increasing trend of participation in free or reduced lunch in these schools at all levels. So what we see here is that over the last 11 years, these schools in North Omaha have seen an increased participation in the federal program that requires that you be very close to the poverty line to be able to participate in it. So given that understanding that we have seen increased challenges, and just to say, I've done an analysis that looks at these schools versus other learning community schools versus schools across the state. And what we find is, first and foremost, there are a few comparisons as it relates to free and reduced lunch participation to these schools. Frankly, they have some of the highest rates of participation in that program, between 80 and 90%. They have the highest rates within the district, they have the highest rates within the learning community, and they have the highest rates within the state. So finding schools to directly compare them to as a function of participation in that program is very difficult. But what I can tell you is when we do, students perform fairly similarly. I will tell you that our students perform a bit better than those comparisons across the state. But a school with 90% free reduced lunch participation, whether it's in Winnebago, whether it's in Schuyler, whether it's in Omaha, all perform relatively similar. So, and that is certainly the case here. Though I would tell you that our results are slightly better than what we see in those districts or those schools in other districts that I just mentioned. And I would suggest that that's part of a multitude of things, be it the nutrition, many of the aspects we talked about that impact student achievement. But I would also say that in this community, we have a level of community support. This room full of people on a Saturday morning being a reflection of that, that has really helped to bring change to our schools. So this is looking at reading scores first. And what this graph shows is reading scores for North Omaha schools, that's on the far left, compared to other elementary schools, that's the second graph. Then we have North Omaha middle schools as compared to other middle schools within the district, and this is a district comparison. And then the last one is high school in North Omaha, the second to last graph, versus other high schools. And that order will be maintained as we look across reading, math, and science. What I want to call out here in the area of reading is the growth that we're seeing at middle school, going from 53.1% in North Omaha proficient in reading to 67.6%, 14.5% gain. And that's really something we're very proud of seeing. But what we don't like to see is this difference between the two groups, between the North Omaha elementary schools and the other elementary schools, or middle schools versus other middle schools. So that is the area of our challenge. But as I said, the schools of North Omaha are a much higher free and reduced lunch participation, and I do feel that is impacting these schools significantly. Turning our attention to math, we see, as Mr. Evans had highlighted, a similar stair step, a similar evidence of gains in these schools. Calling out at both elementary, we saw a 5.2% increase over the last 3 years, and a 6.1% increase in the area of mathematics. High school has remained, I would say, somewhat flat, and I think it's for many reasons. As Mr. Evans has highlighted, many things impact student achievement at high school, and we do have concerns that student engagement in those results is somewhat of a problem as well. In our office right now, the blessing of the district, we are working with some students to start identifying means by which we can engage our young people in these assessments. And we look forward to good results and focus groups with students to come to try to address some of those concerns. So those are the gains we see in mathematics.
Scott, just want to mention to you, as he's walking through these, especially those in the back, there's a sheet that you have that actually have these graphs on them. So if you're following along, he's gone through reading, math, and so I think he's moving to the next one. So again, every piece of data that's being presented this morning, you have in either a simplified form or in the spreadsheet. So thanks, Scott.
Absolutely. And just to clarify, this is across all grades within elementary and middle and high. So this is kind of an aggregate view of those schools. So turning our attention to science, we see some massive gains at elementary here. Now, note this is an assessment that we give at only 3 grade levels, so there is only 1 grade level represented in each of these schools. But we see a 16.1% increase in the science scores of students at North Omaha elementary schools, which vastly eclipses what we see in other schools across the district. So certainly that is evidence of that gap closing between North Omaha schools and other district schools. We also see a 4.2% increase in middle school for those North Omaha schools. You'll see a little more fluctuation in this graph, and that's due to just it being at 1 grade level. So differences between grades of students as they matriculate through the system are more reflected in these. It's a smaller population of students being assessed. So that's a walkthrough across reading, math, and science, North Omaha versus other district schools across all levels. I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
You have one quick question?
Yeah.
My name is Shannon Gruber. I teach up here at North High School. Both Mr. Evans and our data guy, Scott, mentioned that the scores at the high school level reflect the lack of engagement. And I think that maybe most of us here that haven't been here and watched the kids take those tests, I just want to reinforce that we have high school students, and here in Omaha North we have magnet students in math and science and excellent students in reading. But they get put down in front of a multiple choice computer test. It doesn't affect their grade, and they don't even get their own results for months after they take it. So to the extent that you're looking at those, and I may have to speak defensive as a teacher, it doesn't actually reflect the teaching or the learning. It reflects teenagers in front of a computer taking a test. It doesn't matter to them. It matters to us, but it doesn't matter to them. So please keep that in mind when you're looking at the scores. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Do this real quick. So now you have the larger spreadsheet. You've heard from the superintendent. Again, let's recognize the research division for making all of this data available. It's hours, if not months of time, weeks of time to put this together. At your tables now, you have the state of North Omaha schools. You have the by-school report. You've heard from the superintendent on some of the trends, some of the progress, as well as some of the gaps. We want you to take a few minutes at your tables and look at that sheet that has where is the progress from your perspective, where do you see gaps, questions that you still have that need to be answered, and then any quick recommendations that you would have even at this moment. because as you're doing that, we're going to give you about 5 minutes to do that real quick at your table, just individually, and then we'll give you a little bit of time to have a quick conversation. But we want to get our keynote speaker up to hear more from a national level on family and community engagement, and then we'll close out with next steps related to these specific topics. So give you about 5 minutes, look through the data, make observations, write down points. We want to capture that information. You don't have to please don't put your name on it, because we do want to capture that information at the end of the meeting, but observations that you would make based on what you see either in the report or the presentations that have been given so far. Take a few minutes to do that, please.
What he said basically,